Married for 7 years, Julian Sterling and I tried every single way to get pregnant, but nothing worked. Looking at my body, bloated from all the hormone injections and medications, Julian's eyes would turn red. He'd hug me and say, "Claire, it's all my fault. My sperm count is practically zero. I can never make you a mother in this lifetime. But I swear, I will love you with my entire life to make up for it." I believed him. For his sake, I gave up on having children. I even locked up the beachfront Malibu mansion I had fully decorated for a future baby, just to cut off any painful memories. Until today, when I received a call from the prestigious Royal Swan Ballet Academy. "Mrs. Jian, your daughter Lily just pushed her dance partner off the 3-foot-high stage. The other child has a broken leg. Please come with Mr. Sterling immediately." My brain went completely numb. I had never been pregnant. Where the hell did a daughter come from? I rushed to the academy, only to see my supposedly sterile husband holding a beautiful little girl tightly in his arms, shielding her. And standing right next to them was his unforgettable first love, Evelyn Ward. On the incident report, the home address listed was none other than my private Malibu mansion. It turned out that my compromise, my mansion, and my money were nothing but a cozy nest he had built for another woman. Well, I'm going to see how deeply in love you two really are once my money is completely out of the picture. The lights at the charity gala were blinding. On stage, the auctioneer was holding up a crystal angel statue, his voice booming through the microphone. $6 million. Offered by Mrs. Claire Jian. Do I hear any higher bids? I held up my paddle, my expression calm. Julian had been staring at this angel statue in the catalog for days. He told me his mother had been suffering from terrible migraines lately, and he wanted to win the auction to give it to her as a peace offering to soothe her mind. In our 7 years of marriage, Julian had treated me incredibly well. His only flaw was his diagnosed male infertility. To make up for this regret, his love for me was almost pathologically obsessive. And because I loved him, I went out of my way to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I didn't even blink when paying the hundreds of thousands of dollars for his mother Beatrice's annual wellness spa retreats. Buzz. The moment the gavel fell, my phone vibrated violently inside my clutch. It was an unknown number. I lifted my gown and walked out to the terrace of the banquet hall to answer it. "Hello, is this Claire Jian?" A sharp, anxious female voice demanded over the line. "This is the Royal Swan Ballet Academy. Your daughter, Lily Sterling, pushed the lead dancer off the stage during rehearsal. The other girl has a broken leg, and her parents have already called the cops. You and Julian Sterling need to get here right now." The early autumn night wind blew over me, but I felt like I had been plunged straight into an ice bath. "You have the wrong number," I said, my fingers gripping the phone so hard they turned white. "I don't have a daughter." "That's impossible." The woman immediately read off a list of information. Lily Sterling, 7 years old. Father, Julian Sterling. Mother, Evelyn Ward. The emergency contact listed under your name, Claire Jian, with this exact phone number. "Mrs. Jian, your kid caused a massive accident. Playing dumb won't get you out of this." Julian Sterling. Evelyn Ward. These two names were like poison-tipped nails driven violently into my eardrums. Evelyn was Julian's college sweetheart. 7 years ago, when Julian proposed to me, he deleted all her contact info right in front of me and swore they would never see each other again. But now, not only were they seeing each other, they had a 7-year-old daughter? "Mrs. Jian, are you still there? Send me the address." I hung up. The cold wind against my back made me shiver, but my mind was suddenly incredibly clear. Without even picking up the angel statue I had just won, I stepped into my high heels and walked straight into the dark night. The Royal Swan Ballet Academy was located in the most expensive district downtown. When I pushed open the heavy doors of the rehearsal hall, the room was already in absolute chaos. "You need to give us an explanation today. My daughter is supposed to audition for top international companies, and now her leg is broken. Can you even afford to compensate for that?" A woman dripping in diamonds was pointing her finger and screaming at a man. The man, who was bowing his head and repeatedly apologizing, was Julian. The very same Julian who, before leaving the house, had kissed my forehead and told me he had to work late at the office. And hiding behind him was a little girl dressed in a custom white swan tutu. She was clutching the hem of Julian's designer suit jacket, sobbing uncontrollably. "Daddy, I didn't mean to. I'm scared." "Don't be scared, Lily. Daddy's here. Daddy will protect you." Julian knelt down, his heart clearly breaking for her. He pulled her into his arms, reached into his pocket, pulled out a strawberry gummy, unwrapped it, and popped it into her mouth. Standing at the doorway, my stomach turned. Julian had severe OCD and absolutely hated sweets. He would frown even if I ate a single piece of candy near him. Yet, in the pocket of his $100,000 custom suit, he kept strawberry gummies just to comfort this little girl. "Oh, my poor baby. Who dares to bully my sweet granddaughter?" A familiar figure suddenly rushed in from the hallway. My mother-in-law Beatrice, who was supposed to be resting at a private high-end wellness clinic because she couldn't handle the outside draft, was running like a track star. She was holding a pink thermos and immediately threw her arms around Lily, kissing her face. Mom. I walked forward, my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. My voice was like ice. The room fell into a dead silence. Beatrice froze. Julian snapped his head up. The moment his eyes met mine, every drop of color drained from his face, and his pupils shook with sheer terror. Ew. Claire? What are you doing here? He instinctively let go of the little girl and tried to stand up to walk toward me, but a fragile-looking woman next to him quickly grabbed his arm. She was wearing a simple, elegant white dress, her eyes red and tearful. It was Evelyn Ward. Claire. Evelyn looked at me timidly, tears streaming down her face. It's all my fault. Please don't blame Julian. The child is innocent. I ignored her completely and stared straight into Julian's eyes. Julian, weren't you working late at the office? I took a step closer, backing him down. Aren't you sterile? Didn't you say I was the only woman you'd ever have in this life? Panic took over Julian. He violently shook off Evelyn's hand and rushed over, trying to grab my shoulders. Claire, let me explain. It's not what you think. Lily is Evelyn's child with another man. That man ran out on them, and Evelyn was struggling so hard on her own. I was just helping out an old classmate. I'm only her father on paper. On paper. I let out a cold laugh and turned my gaze to the family showcase board on the rehearsal hall wall. Right in the center hung a massive family portrait. Julian was in casual wear, holding a beaming Lily, while Evelyn leaned her head happily on his shoulder. Underneath the photo, the home address was clearly printed. Malibu Mansion, Rose Garden No. 1. That mansion was my premarital property. It was the only inheritance my late parents had left me. Julian, you're not just her dad on paper. You actually used my private mansion to register her school records. My voice wasn't loud, but every word cut like a knife. Julian's face was whiter than paper. He shook his head frantically. Claire, don't misunderstand. That mansion has been sitting empty anyway. To get Lily into this academy, we had to show proof of a multi-million-dollar property. I only borrowed the address. They have never actually lived there, I swear. Yes, exactly. Beatrice chimed in, quickly finding her voice. Claire, don't be so petty. You can't even get pregnant anyway. The Sterling family needs an heir. Even if Lily isn't Julian's biological child, she calls me grandma. What's wrong with me loving her? What's wrong with using an empty house address? I looked at this mother and son, feeling a wave of sheer absurdity. I couldn't get pregnant. Years ago, during our fertility checks, Julian was the one whose medical report showed 0 active sperm. He had literally knelt in the pouring rain, slapping his own face, begging me not to leave him. To save his pride, I had told everyone that my body was too weak to carry a child. And now, they were throwing that lie back in my face as if it were my fault. Are you Claire Jeanne? The mother of the injured girl sneered, looking at us. I don't care about your family drama. But today, if I don't get $3 million in compensation, this isn't over. Since that mansion is yours, you are paying for this. The school administrator also stepped up, handing me an incident liability form. Mrs. Jeanne, since you are listed as the primary emergency contact and the owner of the registered property, please sign here. I looked down at the paper. Mother's name, Claire Jeanne. Contact number, my private cell number. Home address, Rose Garden No. 1. They hadn't just stolen my house, they had stolen my identity. Evelyn had been walking around using my name, enjoying the social status of being Mrs. Sterling. I pulled out my phone and took high-definition photos of the liability form, the family portrait on the wall, and the 3 guilty faces in front of me. Claire, what the hell are you doing? Julian lunged to grab my phone. I stepped back, dodging his hands. My eyes were dead. Julian, I'm not signing this, and I'm not paying a single penny. I looked around the room, making sure my voice was clear enough for everyone to hear. I, Claire Jeanne, am declaring right now. I do not have any children. This girl Lily has absolutely nothing to do with me. As for the Rose Garden No. 1 mansion, I have never authorized anyone to use it. If you dare forge my signature on any documents, I will see you in federal court. Without giving Julian another glance, I turned on my heels and walked out into the night. The cold wind hit me again. I kept my back straight, but my tears finally broke free, streaming down my face. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of devotion. It was all a meticulously planned scam. The rain on the asphalt of the downtown avenue was cold, but it did not wash away the sticky, heavy humidity of the autumn night. I climbed into the back seat of my Bentley, my hands steady as I pulled my phone from my clutch. My face was pale in the rearview mirror, but my eyes were clear. The 7 years of my life with Julian had been a meticulously built cage, and, like any smart investor, the moment I realized the assets were entirely fraudulent, I prepared to liquidate them without a second thought. I called my family's chief legal counsel, Mr. Harrison. Claire, his deep, professional voice came through the car's speakers. I saw the transaction notification for the Crystal Angel. $6 million. Do you want the logistics team to transport it to the penthouse? Leave the statue at the gallery, Richard. I said, my voice quiet, dropping to a cool, lethal register. And I want you to initiate a property preservation order on Rose Garden number 1. Immediately. The line went silent for a fraction of a second. Rose Garden number 1? Your parents' Malibu estate. Mr. Harrison's voice turned serious. Is someone there? Evelyn Ward is there, I said, looking out the window at the flashing red lights of the city's neon signs. She's been utilizing my name, my phone number, and my address to register her daughter at the Royal Swan Ballet Academy. I want a formal eviction notice served by 9 tomorrow morning. Understood, Richard said, his tone turning sharp. I'll have the court bailiffs at the gate by 8. What about the Sterling Group's joint venture accounts? Freeze them, I said. Every single one. I'm pulling all GN family capital out of their logistics line by noon. I hung up. I didn't drive back to our shared penthouse downtown, the one I had purchased, using my own trust fund while Julian saved his salary for our future children. I drove to a private boutique hotel near the harbor, checked into the executive suite under my maiden name, and opened my laptop. I logged into the medical portal of the Orenburg Fertility Clinic. 6 years ago, when the chief embryologist handed us the report showing Julian's 0 active sperm count, I had wept in the hallway, holding his hand, promising him that I didn't care about having children. But now, staring at the digital file on the screen, a sudden chilling thought crossed my mind. I picked up my phone and called a personal contact, the director of the state medical database. Dr. Vance, I said, my voice steady. I need you to run a forensic audit on a fertility report from 6 years ago. Case number, Sterling 9902. The next morning, the winter fog lay heavy over the city's financial district. At exactly 9 a.m., my father-in-law's corporate headquarters, the Sterling Group, was surrounded by a fleet of black sedans bearing the gold lion seal of the GN Corporation. I walked into the lobby, my black wool trench coat draped over my shoulders, my heels making a sharp, steady click-clack on the marble floor. Beside me stood Richard Harrison, holding a thick leather folder of financial files. The receptionist stood up instantly, her face pale. Mrs. Sterling. Ms. GN. Mr. Sterling is currently in an extraordinary board meeting. I know, I said. I bypassed her, walked straight to the executive elevators, and took them to the top floor. When I pushed open the double oak doors of the boardroom, the room went dead silent. Julian was standing at the head of the long glass table, his tie slightly crooked, his face looking sallow and exhausted under the bright lights. Beside him, several senior partners were arguing over a financial spreadsheet. Claire. Julian's voice cracked, a sudden, wild panic exploding in his slate gray eyes. He took a step forward, his hands trembling. What are you doing here? I told you, I was going to come to the hotel tonight to explain everything. You don't need to explain, Julian, I said, setting the leather folder on the glass table. This is a formal notice of capital withdrawal, Richard Harrison announced, his deep voice echoing clearly in the quiet room. The GN Corporation is reclaiming all outstanding credit lines and joint venture capital from the Sterling Group, effective at 12 p.m. today. The board members stood up from their chairs in a wave of frantic, corporate panic. Ms. GN, you can't do this, the financial director screamed, his face turning a pasty gray. Without the GN Group's cash flow, our supply chain will collapse. We won't be able to pay the port fees on Friday. That is no longer my concern, I said, my voice quiet, dropping to a cool, lethal register. And Julian, about your medical report. I pulled out a single sheet of paper from my bag, the audit results Dr. Vance had delivered to my email 30 minutes ago. 6 years ago, you paid Dr. Zhao $50,000 to write a fake medical report saying your sperm count was 0. I said, looking him dead in the eye. You did it because you had already gotten Evelyn pregnant, and you wanted to make sure I would never ask for an heir, so all my parents' inheritance would go to you and your paper daughter. Julian's face went whiter than the white silk of his collar. He stumbled back against his chair, his hands shaking so violently he had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling. No, Claire, it's not true. I did it to protect you. You said your body was too weak. I was never weak, Julian, I said, my voice steady. But you are. You're a coward who lived in my house, used my money, and let your mother call me a sterile failure just to cover up your own cheap betrayal. I turned my back on him. The police are waiting downstairs, Julian. The mother of the girl Lily pushed off the stage has already filed a criminal complaint for identity theft and forgery. I'll see you in court. The drive to Rose Garden number 1 was silent. The prime Malibu estate, nestled on a cliff overlooking the gray, restless Pacific Ocean, was the only inheritance my late parents had left me. It was a beautiful, classical white stone villa surrounded by thousands of climbing pink roses. When my car pulled up to the security gates, 2 court bailiffs and 3 moving trucks were already parked on the gravel driveway. Ms. Jian, the lead bailiff said, tipping his hat. The property preservation order has been executed. The residents are currently inside. I stepped out of the car, my heels crunching on the gravel. When I pushed open the heavy mahogany front doors, the scent of fresh strawberries and cheap vanilla perfume hit my nose, the scent of Evelyn Ward. Inside the living room, Beatrice, my mother-in-law, was screaming at the movers, who were currently packing her expensive porcelain vases into cardboard boxes. Stop this. Do you know who I am? I am Mrs. Sterling. My son is the head of the Sterling Group. This is my house. It is not your house, Mom, I said, walking into the room. Beatrice froze, her face twisting with a sudden vicious rage. She ran toward me, her manicured fingers clawing at my coat. Claire, you ungrateful bitch. How dare you do this to us? Evelyn and Lily are family. Where are they supposed to go? It's winter. Lily's leg is sore. She should have thought about her leg before she pushed another child off the stage. Beatrice, I said, my voice cold. Evelyn walked down the grand marble staircase, wearing a silk slip dress that had been purchased using my secondary credit card. Her hair was loose, her eyes red, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. Claire, she whimpered, her voice dropping into that fragile, pathetic pitch. Please, don't do this. I'll leave. I'll take Lily and go to a motel. But Beatrice, she's old, she can't handle the cold. Just let her stay here for a few days. The locks are being changed in 10 minutes, Evelyn, I said, gesturing to the locksmiths who had just walked in. And the silk dress you're wearing? It was paid for with my money. Please take it off before you leave, or I will have the officers cite you for receiving stolen property. Evelyn's face turned from pale to a sickly pasty yellow. She looked at Beatrice, then at her own hands, realizing for the first time in 7 years that her true love Julian was no longer a shield. Chloe. A small voice called out from the stairs. Lily stood there, wearing her custom tutu, her face wet with tears. She looked at her mother, then at me. Are we poor again, Mommy? The little girl whimpered. Evelyn didn't answer. She fell to her knees on the marble floor, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with violent, uncontrollable sobs. I looked at the 3 of them, and for the first time in 7 years my chest didn't feel tight. I felt a deep, permanent warmth spreading through my veins. The corporate collapse of the Sterling Group was completed by the end of December. With the Jian Corporation's capital withdrawn, the bank had called in all of the Sterling Group's outstanding loans. The company's stock plummeted by 80%, and the board of directors held an extraordinary meeting, voting unanimously to remove Julian as CEO. His personal assets were frozen, and his name was blacklisted from every major financial guild in the city. The $3 million compensation lawsuit filed by the mother of the injured girl at the Ballet Academy went to a public trial. Because I refused to sign the waiver, and because the documentation showed Julian and Evelyn had forged my signature to register Lily, they were convicted of corporate identity theft and public fraud. Evelyn was sentenced to 3 years in a state penitentiary. Julian was stripped of his mansion, his cars, his office, and his dignity. On a rainy Tuesday evening in late January, the winter sleet turned the streets of Orenburg into a dark, shimmering mirror. I was leaving my corporate headquarters, my black wool trench coat pulled tight around my neck, my umbrella held steady against the wind, when a tall, dark figure stepped out from the shadow of the brick building. It was Julian. He looked like a ghost. He was wearing a wet, cheap coat, his face pale and sunken, his gray eyes bloodshot and hollow. He had been seen wandering the streets of the harbor district for days, asking everyone if they had seen a woman named Claire. He stood in front of my car door, his body shaking with the cold. Claire. He whispered, his voice raw, broken, and completely stripped of his pride. Please, just let me talk to you. Just for 5 minutes. I have nothing to say to you, Julian, I said, my hand reaching for the door handle. Move aside. I'm going home. No. He fell to his knees on the rain-slicked pavement, his hands reaching out to grab the hem of my coat, his forehead pressing against my leather boots. Please, Claire. Just let me hold your hand once. I don't care about the child. I don't care about Evelyn. I've frozen them out. I'll work 3 jobs. I'll give you everything. Just don't look at me like a stranger. I looked down at the most powerful man in Orenburg, kneeling in the mud at my feet, his hands clutching my shoes like a beggar waiting for scraps. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, and no pain. The man I loved for 7 years died the night you put his name under her portrait at Rose Garden, Julian, I said, my voice quiet and cool over the sound of the rain. You are just someone who looks like him. I pulled my hand back, climbed into my car, and locked the door. The vehicle pulled away into the bright, clean streets of the harbor town, leaving his shadow behind in the dark. The spring in the harbor town arrived with a brilliant, golden warmth. My family's cottage was warm, the garden filled with the first blooms of the white roses my late parents had loved. I stood on the wooden porch, a warm cup of tea in my hands, watching the yellow butterflies dance over the flowers under the sun. My hands were strong, my posture relaxed, and my chest was light, free of the suffocating pressure of my past life. Claire, my assistant Clara, called out from the living room, her voice warm and professional. The final transition files for the new logistics line have been approved. We're launching the first shipping line at noon. Coming, Clara. I smiled, setting my cup down. I walked down the hallway, my heels making a sharp, steady, and confident sound against the polished wooden floor. I looked up at the warm, blue sky, took a deep, clean breath, and stepped into the warm light of my future. I was finally truly free,